We will be in the book of 1 Corinthians today, chapter 9. We're going to kind of start out there. We're going to be in some other passages as well, but we're going to start out in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to pick up on verse 24 and read down to 27, just a few passages there. And we're going to work our way through a few things that the Apostle Paul has to say. And we'll also be in the book of Hebrews a little later. But 1 Corinthians chapter 9, pick up on verse 24. If you're there, say amen. Amen. All right. Let's see what God's Word has to say to us this morning. He says, "Do you know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we run for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection. Lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified." We're in the second week of the sermon series I've called Awkward. I think most of us agreed last week. Some of us didn't acknowledge it, but I think we all agreed that we've all felt awkward at one time or another in our life. In some situation. It may have been many years ago for some of us, but it just happens. And I would guarantee you that some of us probably have something that comes to mind right now that you'd rather not share with the rest of us about an awkward moment in your life. It just happens, even to the best of us. It just happens. And as we talked a little bit last week, we should also remember that even during the awkward moments of our life, that God is even trying to use those as teaching moments in our life. He's always trying to teach us something, help us to go a little bit farther up the road, even in odd things like that. You say, "Well, how could God possibly use that?" He's God. That's how He does that. He's God. But we're going to look at working through some things with the Apostle Paul today. And as I look at the Apostle Paul's life, look at how many things that he was involved in and how many situations, how many people he talked to. I don't think it ever states, it comes out and said, nothing that I could find. Maybe it's in there. But the Apostle Paul at certain times had to feel awkward about some of the things he was doing. Some of those things didn't come natural to him. There's no way. Not everything comes natural to everybody. I don't care how talented or gifted you are, not everything comes natural to you. Now, some people, it may seem like it comes natural, but it just not. So he had to feel awkward. So, Jesus, he was 100% God, 100% human. Paul, he was just like me. He was just like me. He had his struggles. He had his things he felt awkward with. There was things that he just, it wasn't natural to him. So I can relate to him. No one fits in everywhere. Now, some of the people, you may have friends and things. He said, like, wherever you show up with them, it's just like they just seem like they fit right in. You're like, I wish I could do that. Well, that ain't me at all. I don't fit in a lot of places. It's just what it is, and I'm okay with that. But I also feel awkward when I don't fit in somewhere. You ever go into a room and you think you're going to fit in and you don't? That ain't no fun, right? No one fits everywhere, and that's okay. Because God made us each unique. It's all right. Now, the scripture we just read today in 1 Corinthians, Paul, the Apostle Paul, he uses an athletic metaphor to try and reach the people of Corinth, the Corinthian people. Now, why would he do that? Why would he use a story? Why would he use such a thing to try to, why would he go in and tell this? He didn't even know a lot of these people. He might have talked to a few of them. Why would he do that? Because he was using a story, a metaphor, that's basically what a metaphor is, he gave them something that they would understand. Because you got to remember, in any situation, who you're talking to. Some people, you don't want to feel awkward. Sometimes you got to change your lingo sometimes and how you talk. When I go to the city, I try to keep my mouth shut sometimes because I know what I sound like. And I know, I have that country accent, and when I go up north, it's very noticeable. Me and Trish one time, we were up in the north of Michigan, and one time we stopped at a Subway to get some lunch. I started ordering what I wanted, telling them what I wanted. The girl just looked at me before I said anything. She said, "Where are you from?" She automatically knew that I didn't belong there. So, or I was from somewhere else, I should say. And trying to fit in always ain't going to work. Me fitting up there ain't going to work. Now when I go down south, I don't have a problem. Nobody says a word to me. So Paul used a story that they would have readily understood. You see, he used an athletic metaphor on that because the most famous Greek games, of course, are the Olympic Games. That still happen every 4 years, the Olympics. The Olympics, somehow sometimes in our society, we think everything's a modern invention. The Olympics been around for thousands of years. Been, athletic competition, it's a tradition of old. It's just what it is. That's why Paul was doing what he was doing. That's why he said the things that he did. Now, what I find kind of funny today, it would kind of look odd to me anyway. Back then, the competition, what they actually won, they would put a leafy wreath on their head, and that was their crown. I've won a few things in my life, but I've never had anybody put a leafy wreath on my head. I would feel kind of awkward if somebody tried to put it on me. I'm like, what in the world we got going on here? Some things would feel awkward in life, and that one would be me. But the thing is, no matter how many things, some of us are very competitive by nature. Maybe you've always been that way. Some of you are not. Some of you I could care less. But the thing about it is, any time that you participate in any kind of competition, you've got to play by the rules. Paul talks about becoming disqualified. In anything that you do, you know what? You've got to play by the rules that are set. You just can't go along and make your own rules up. You can become disqualified. I think of one story with me when I was a teenager. I don't know, what grade? I guess it was 9th grade. I guess it was my first year in high school. They don't even do this anymore. I'm showing my age here. I don't know. Maybe the school that you went to, they didn't do it either. I don't know. But the school we went to, I remember all the boys, they come in and they had it was for the county, actually. You would represent your school, what have you. You're different. They had that would have made me, 14? They had a competition for all the guys. They were promoting fitness, is what they were doing, trying to get us in all this different things. They had these weightlifting competitions. And of course, they divided you up into weight classes and things like that. They were actually going to give you trophies and all this stuff, So as a 14-year-old, that was exciting to try to win a trophy. It was very exciting. And they divided us up into weight classes, and they had a sign-up sheet and all that. Well, most of the guys actually entered. Most of the guys in my age group entered and things. But something they didn't do right off the bat. Some of the guys put their name in the wrong weight class. Yeah. I remember there was one guy in my weight class. We were several of them. It seemed like a large, the weight of that category, I don't remember what it was now, but the weight of that, a lot of the guys in the class kind of fell into that category, I guess. And I was in that weight class as well. And as we were lifting the weights and things, and trying to speed ahead here, make a long story short here, as we were going ahead, it was 3 of us right at the very top of it. There were, possibly for the first place. Well, this one guy, he outlifted me, and he was going to get first place. And as we were all standing up there, I don't know what, finally the guy that was in charge of all this, I don't remember, the coach or what have you, he noticed that the guy that got first place looked like he was a lot bigger than the rest of us. Yeah, I was like 10 or 15 pounds below the maximum weight. And this guy was way bigger than I was. Well, they said, "Lee, how much do you weigh?" And he told him the weight that was in that category. He said, "We're going to put you on a scale first before we give you anything." They put him on the scale. He was like 12 pounds over the limit. So he was like 25 pounds heavier than everybody else in there that had been lifting again, because nobody was right on the line. He'd become disqualified, because he didn't belong in that category to start with. some of it was his fault, some of it was the coach's fault for not weighing people. But even though he won, he didn't get anything for it, all his effort. He went through all the things that we did. He didn't get anything for it because he was a lot heavier. He belonged in another weight class. And when they put him in his own weight class, he just was average. He wasn't doing that, what he was doing. My point in all that is, you can spend a lot of time and effort in things, but you can become disqualified in it because you didn't play by the rules. And so it goes within our spiritual life as well. We can put a lot of time and effort into the things of God in our life. We can be a Christian, but if you don't play by the rules that God sets,
Amen,
you can become disqualified. That's not what I say. That's what the Apostle Paul's getting at here. You're not allowed to make your own rules up. And that's what you see a lot of people doing that today. Oh, God will understand. You're making your own rules up. Stop making excuses. You're making your own rules up. I don't want to put all my time and effort into things to only become disqualified in the end. Because I'm going to certainly be disappointed. Because I disqualified myself. God didn't disqualify me. He told me right up front what He wanted from me. He's been completely honest. His word, if I were just to read it, it tells me everything. And He has spoken into my heart. But yet I decided to do whatever it is I wanted to do. Any way I wanted, and you know what? I become disqualified. In a journey of faith, I'm not allowed to just do whatever I want. I know that's not popular in our society today. When you say that in society, oh, don't you judge me. You're judging me. I'm not judging you. When it comes to the things of God, you just can't do that. Some people are going to win in this life, only to lose in the next. Maybe you didn't get disqualified from anything in this life. But if you don't run the race, your journey of faith in the right way, you're going to become disqualified in that. There are some people, we all know people, that have won competitions and they cheated. They didn't do it the right way. They didn't comply by the rules that were set, and yet they still won and they didn't get disqualified. That's just not fair, is it? It's just like life. It's not fair sometimes. But I assure you, that won't happen in the end of days. There's going to be nobody slide by. You know what? We're all going to abide by the rules that God has set. That's what Apostle Paul is trying to say. Don't become disqualified after all your time and effort. Maybe your heart has become hard. There's some things that need to change. Now, some games in life that we play, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. But if you're playing, something that counts, when you play a game that counts, the rules matter. When you play a game that counts. And any game that you're playing that counts, and you just decide, I'm going to play it any way I want, you're not going to be able to win. You're going to become disqualified. It's all going to be for naught. There's some games, like when I used to play basketball with the youth, a lot of the times we were actually out there just fooling around, shooting and doing this and that. It didn't matter. There weren't any rules. We just did whatever we wanted. There weren't no rules. But sometimes the guys, they really wanted to get into a competition. All of a sudden there was rules. All of a sudden, every little thing, oh, you fouled me. You did this. You did that. Because, see, now it was serious. It was different. It counted for something. See, it made a difference. Sometimes you ever break a rule and you didn't even know you were breaking it? Yeah, I did that before. Yeah, I did that with my CDL license before when I pulled into the scales. Yeah, when I DOT, I was breaking rules I didn't even know, and I thought I was up on everything. So yeah, they reminded me. They give me this little piece of paper to go along with it too that I'd broken the rules. Yeah, and I had to send them some money. Can you imagine that? I didn't even know I was breaking them. They said, well, I learned that rule, though. I didn't break it again, even though I didn't know the first time. Yeah, that was awful nice of them to give me that little piece of paper. Yeah. But see, I've got to learn along the way. I don't know, sometimes I don't always grasp everything the first time, but, after a while I get it. Sooner or later I'm going to get it. I don't think God is going to hold that against me. That when I went through those scales that I broke a law that I didn't know I was breaking. I don't think God cares about that. Now the DOT, the state police may care about it. But I don't think God cares about that. We get things all mixed up. See, some things that God cares about, it's just some of the things in our everyday life, but there's some things we got to get right. There's certain things that do count. I remember a friend of mine used to tell me, you know what he used to say? He said, you got to work hard to stay stupid. I'm like, well, that's true, right? There's no learning curve. You know what I mean? Sooner or later, you got to. In other words, you just can't be paying any attention at all. You don't care about anything. Sooner or later, so you're working hard to stay stupid. I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense, and I can really relate to that in my younger life. When I look back on my younger me, I'm like, yeah, that's me. I worked pretty hard to stay stupid, and I did a good job of it. But there's some things in life that are so much more important. We have to get the most important things right in life. And you've got to do it the way God has laid out for us. Now, there's flexibility in it. God is not a taskmaster. That is not what I'm getting at here. You got to do it this way or you're going to burn in hell. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what God gives us flexibility to a point on certain things because our personalities are different to a certain point. Now, there's some things that are black and white. There's no gray area, as they say. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, but I'm talking about within your personality and how you go about things. God's going to give you a little leeway. And how do I know what some of that little bit of a leeway is? I'm not talking about the black and white issues. You know what? In today's society, there is no right or wrong. I'm not talking about that at all. That's not what I mean by that. But how will I know which direction that I'm supposed to go? Prayer. That's how you know you should be praying. There's something that I read one time, and I can't remember. I jotted it down. I don't even know where it is, if I read it somewhere, but there was something called a New Zealand prayer book. I had never heard of it either. Anybody else has never heard of it until I never heard it. Yeah. One thing I read in there was this, and I thought it was a little prayer. It says, God be in my head and in my understanding. God be in my eyes and in my looking. God be in my mouth and in my speaking. God be in my heart and in my thinking. God be at my in and in my departing. Amen. I'm like, well, that's really good. I really like that. I try to remember that often because when I make the first things first, the most important things first, the rest of it take care of itself. I get so worked up about things that don't really matter. I don't follow them as much as I used to, but I used to be a big sports fanatic. I like, I'd got my favorite teams and this and that, and I'd get all worked up when I was a young man, and when my team didn't work, I was wound tight, watching TV, and I was all upset, and, some things don't really matter. It's just a game. But, I got to get the most important things right, though. I have to get them right. And I've got to do those things that God has called me to do in the way that He has called me to do them. He has laid out His Word for me He guides me and directs me. His Word does. Many times we don't know which one to go, but maybe, maybe we're just doing our own thing now. We're not playing by His rules anymore. All right, I'll say this. We should all have a end-game plan in mind. And what I mean by that is how we run the race of life and our journey with faith. You've got to run it in a certain way if you plan to win. You've got to run your life, your faith journey and your life in a certain way if you plan on winning in the end. And my view of winning at the end is getting to heaven. One day when I cross over to the other side. All right, I want to give you a little analogy here. Baseball's started back up here now, the baseball season. As a batter stands at the home plate waiting for the pitch, every batter's desire is to reach the home plate again. Whether they hit a home run or whether they get on base and somebody else bats them in, Every batter's goal is to come back across that plate again. That's why they're up there. They're just not up there passing time. That's what their goal is. The goal is to reach home. Our goal should be also to reach home. You do know this is only temporary, right? We're only here for a little while. I don't care how long you live here, you're only here for a little while. Our goal should be to reach home again. And you have to do that by playing by the rules that God has laid out and just not making your own rules up as you go along. All right, let me ask you, when you're at bat, even if you haven't played baseball since you were a little kid, everybody knows the rules. Now, when you get a hit, when you run the bases, can you run them in any order you want? If you can, let me know how that works out for you. Can you run after you get a hit? Can you run to second first, then go to third, and then back to first? No, you got to do it in a certain order. What would happen if you got a hit and you ran the bases in any way you wanted? What would happen? You'd be disqualified. That hit would not count. It would not count because you didn't play by the rules. You decided to do whatever it is you want. You'd be disqualified. You could hit a home run 100 feet over top of the fence, but you still got to run the bases. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. You still have to run the bases, and you have to run them in a certain order. You could hit it clean out of sight. No, I'm not running the bases today. I can hit it clean out of sight. I'm going to run the bases any way I want now. Still don't count. You've been disqualified by yourself. Nobody did it to you. You were disqualified. You've got to do things in the correct order. When you become disqualified, it's only going to leave you empty. It's going to leave you empty. I read a saying one time. Sometimes I jot down things. I find little notes and things, little quotes or something. I have no idea who said it, and I don't know even where I got it from, but I like it. It says, "Don't get upset with the mirror. Fix the reflection."
Amen.
Sometimes we need to take a look at ourselves, and that's the hardest thing we're ever going to do in this life. The will to win means nothing if there's no will to prepare. We have to prepare for the things that are to come in this life. We over-evaluate our immediate needs. We think that's the most important thing right then and there, but yet we undervalue our long-term needs. The things that are most important. Yes, you have immediate needs that have to be satisfied sometimes. I mean, if you need something to drink, you got to have something to drink. What have you, but you know what? Those long-term needs are going to get you where you need to be in the end. Those things that need to be taken care of. We undervalue those things. Now I'm going to jump around in some scriptures here. You don't have to turn there, but I'll just give you the reference. In the book of Genesis, chapter 25, we all know the story about two brothers, Jacob and Esau. Now we know that's a story of a birthright that was forfeited by Esau. It was forfeited by the things that he did. He willingly gave up that birthright. He forfeited it. So he became disqualified now because he gave it up to get that birthright. The scripture says that Esau gave up his birthright, which was a big deal. And the birthright back then is basically he got the largest portion of his father's inheritance, basically, in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's a lot of what it was. He gave up his birthright for a bowl of stew, it says. Boy, I sure hope that stew was good. Gave up his birthright for a bowl of stew. There is so much more to the story. I know we're not going to be able to touch on all of it today. Let's look at a few things for a minute. Keep this in mind as we just quickly move through Jacob and Esau. How did Esau become disqualified? It was his own actions. Whatever. Jacob did not take his birthright. I know he said he stole his birthright, he cheated him. Esau gave it up for the bowl of stew. He gave it up. Now Jacob might have did some underhanded things, some deceiving things in the story. Let me just say this, but Esau's the one that gave it up. He had already done all those things. He had disqualified himself. Now, I'm going to read you two passages. A lot of times that's missed in the story of Jacob and Esau. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 16 and 17. This speaks about Esau. A lot of times it's overlooked. Book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 16 and 17. It says this. Let there be any fornicator, profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. For you know that afterwards, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it diligently with tears. Esau did that to himself. Esau did all that stuff to himself. We know that he got angry with his brother, but instead of looking in the mirror at himself, he got angry with his brother. He blamed it on his brother. Yes, it was his brother completely on the up and up. No, he wasn't. But he did it to himself. I'm going to just say this. Anger brings nothing but destruction. Amen. Anger brings nothing but destruction. There's some things that have crossed your path in life that have made you so angry, and you want to do some things. Angry brings nothing but destruction. Oh, and you're a holy anger, Pastor? Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about here. And I'm going to just say this. Most of the anger we have ain't holy anger either. Most of it. Not most of it. There might be a few instances, but most of it is not. Esau blamed his brother Jacob for all his problems. He didn't do any inward searching. It says he had tears. But it wasn't coming from his soul. It was an outward appearance there. Everybody was at the root of Esau's problems except for Esau. At no time did Esau take into account all his problems were because of his character flaws. He had become disqualified all because of things that were going on inside of him that he had never addressed. There's some things that we need to look at inside of ourselves. You know, there's a time and a place and there's a way to go about things. And, you know, sometimes it's good for me. I don't do this all the time. I like to be spontaneous sometimes in my prayer. And there's other times I like to work through some things. You got to do what works for you. As we talked about last week, you got to do what works for you. I'm going to give you a few things that I found in some old notes I had. I don't know where I got it from. I might have come up with it. I don't even know where it come from. But when I was reading it this week, I was like, that's good. I like it. It works for me. And I'm going to share it. Maybe it'll work for somebody else. There's nothing earth-shattering on this list. But there's a few things that I jotted down. I call it seven P's. I don't know where they come from. But it works for me. It helps me to keep on the right path. First one is proceed. In other words, I have to start somewhere. If you wait to be ready, you'll never arrive. If you wait to be ready before you move, you'll never arrive where you need to be. I'm not ready yet. If you wait to be ready, you'll never arrive. Second one, pursue. In other words, don't get distracted by things of less importance. You got to pursue your calling in God, and you got to pursue your journey of faith. If you ever want to arrive where you want to be at the end, you've got to pursue that. Third thing is prepare. If you're not ready, it's no one else's fault. I wasn't taught this. Nobody told me. If you're not ready, it's nobody else's fault. You have to prepare. Fourthly, proceed. In other words, we must keep focused. Sometimes we just got to make a decision. Some people won't make a decision. I don't know about you, but sometimes, sometimes it's hard to make a decision even where to go to eat. Have you ever sat in the car with your spouse and you can't figure out where to go to eat? How easy is that? But we can't even do that. It's hard, isn't it? Where do you want to eat? Oh, wherever you want to go. Whatever. Got to make a decision. What do they say? The road is full of flat squirrels because they couldn't make a decision, right? Purpose. Number 5 is purpose. To know your purpose is to be motivated, or it should motivate you. Do you know your purpose in life? You should. You should. It should be motivating you. 6, produce. To know your purpose, I'm sorry, I'm reading the same one again. Produce. We all want to see fruit for our labor. That's great. I like to see something come of all my time and effort when I put it into something. I like to see something come of it. But I have to remember it's got to be done in God's timing and in His way. If it's not done in His timing and in His way, it's not going to come to anything. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm wore out. And the seventh thing, the last one, is be persistent. Persist. It's hard to beat someone who won't quit. It's hard to beat somebody who won't quit. I don't care how talented, how gifted they are, whatever. If they just keep coming, it's hard to beat them. After a while, you get tired of fooling with them. Because they're here to keep coming. It's hard to beat somebody who won't quit. But what I see among the Christian people, and a lot of, they just want to quit. They just want to walk away. It's easier for me just to go live my life. The way everything is set up today, it makes it hard for a Christian to live. I'm telling you, do not quit. Don't become disqualified after all the time and effort you put in. And all will be for naught if you walk away and you quit. If that's crossing your mind, please don't do that. We must quit living as if the purpose of life is to arrive at death safely, because it's not. The voice you listen to determines a lot about how your life is going to go. I don't know who you're listening to, and you can't even listen to your own self sometimes. Because sometimes we give bad advice to ourselves. You know, we get all this stuff and all this input and all this, and all these people living this great life. I'm telling you, you can win in this life but lose in the next. A little prayer that I put on Facebook the other day or yesterday, I'm going to close in that. It's a good prayer and it works for me. Like I say, it might not work for you, but it works for me. I wrote this. It says, God forgive me when I shuffle along, my eyes to the ground, absorbed in the things that are in front of me. Teach me to know that Christ is where my purpose will be found. God, I choose to be alert and present to my purpose in this life. I would choose to lift my eyes to the horizon to see things from your perspective and not mine. I don't know where you're at in your journey of faith. I don't know what all you got going on. I don't know if you're distracted by many things. I don't know if you're so busy you're not even sure which way to go right now. And you're being pulled in many ways. But I assure you to keep on the path. Just keep pushing forward. It's hard to beat somebody who won't quit. And you be that person this week. When you want to quit, when you want to walk away. There's a lot of us that want to walk away from a lot of things in this life right now. We're tired and we just want to walk away. I'm telling you, it's hard to beat somebody who won't quit. Be that person this week. And remember that in your journey of faith this week as you're walking along and something hard comes against you. Don't quit. Don't quit. With every head bowed and every eye closed. I'm just going to keep it simple today. That's what I feel led to do.